Have you ever thought how fashion could be a force for both people and the planet? In this episode, we explore how refugee artisans are teaching us how sustainability, resilience, and culture intersect. It's short, it's powerful, and it will change how you see fashion and the future of sustainability.
We live in a consumer driven capitalist world right now, and the push is to buy more, buy more, buy more, and buy cheaper and buy faster and buy now. What is the true cost of producing this fast fashion? It's awful, we know, for the planet, and it's also really awful for the people that are working in these sweatshops. And we've all heard of the awful working conditions and the buildings that have collapsed. So the thing is, if your bottom line is making more and selling more and making more money, you're not going to be able to have something that's sustainable. I believe that you cannot have social resilience and environmental resilience are inseparable, right? Because at some level, these things go hand in hand. And so if your bottom line is that kind of resiliency and sustainability, that kind of spans across all sectors. You can't say that you're trying to sustain the planet and then not sustain the people, because then what's the point, right?
Welcome to Sustainability Transformations podcast, where we explore bold ideas to drive positive change for people, the community, and business. And today's guest is Shahd Alasaly, who's an author, a designer, and founder of Blue Meets Blue. Shahd's work blends fashion, social impact, and sustainability by partnering with refugee artisans to create heritage textiles that honor culture while protecting the planet. Her designs don't just tell a story, they embody resilience, dignity, and environmental responsibility. And the key theme of our conversation is to explore how social resilience meets planetary resilience and what lessons we can learn from building sustainable futures that value both the people and the planet. Shahd, thank you so much for joining. You've built a brand rooted in both craftsmanship and social impact. Can you take us back to the moments you realized that empowering refugee artisans wasn't just about fashion, but was also about sustainability and resilience?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. I would say my journey into the Blue Meets Blue and creating a company came from two places, really: my Syrian background and my heritage, in addition to my academic research. So my academic research was on trauma, especially within displaced communities, and collective healing from collective trauma. And then obviously, as someone who has this Syrian background, we had witnessed a civil war in 2011 that spanned a whole decade and then some. And that civil war resulted in the displacement of a lot of refugees and a lot of people internally and outside of Syria as well. So this was where I was in the middle of doing a master's in psychology, and I really wanted to blend that academic research with a form of transformation within a company. So the goal was to create a sustainable clothing line that employed refugees, especially refugees that came with this background and skill set in sewing, because a lot of times refugees come to a new country or go to a new country, and that skill set is not acknowledged, it's not validated. So I really wanted to create a company that they felt like they had a job in, something they felt confident in, something that they felt empowered to give. And then work is dignity. These people wanted to work, they didn't want handouts. So that was a part of it. The other part was I really wanted to change a lot of the misconceptions and stereotypes about refugees within the United States. And finally, I wanted to focus on that sustainability aspect. So sustainability, not just for the planet, but also sustainability within the company culture, fair wages, obviously sourcing ethical textile. And just for context, because I know you're asking where this came from, Syria has always been a land of like fabric and textile. And so for many centuries, Damascus sat at the heart of the Silk Road. And this is where like you had caravans that would carry silks from China and cotton from India and pass through markets where Syrians were able to take that and transform it into something that was entirely their own. So from Syria, there was the fabric called damask, which is this like very interwoven fabric. And then there was brocade, which was a fabric of silk. And a lot of times within that brocade, it would be woven with a thread of gold or a thread of silver as well. So it was a very luxurious fabric. And it was all the motifs that were used were always like floral or geometric, and they all had like different meanings. A lot of the floral ones came from floral prints that were found within Syrian Syrian Arab homes. So these were like plants that were native to the country. But these weren't just textiles, they were treasures. People would carry them. People love to tell the story that Queen Elizabeth's dress was made from Syrian brocade. So it was a very rich history. And unfortunately, during the Civil War, 80% of the fabric industry was wiped intentionally because it produced a lot of income for the country. So it was intentionally destroyed. So now we are left with very few factories over there that create this beautiful fabric. So the goal now for me as I'm relaunching Blue Meets Blue is to bring the fabric from there and employ the refugees here.
Ah, that's a fabulous story, and I'm sure we will unpack some of it. So, you've shared your journey through the sustainable fashion and the social impact. Has there any big surprises? What have you learned along the journey of combining not only what affects the environment, but also people and
Yeah.
business? And I'm curious to know how arriving at that vision and mission and your approach, are there any surprises? Were there any pushback of any sort or explaining? Perhaps you can share any insight along that journey.
It's so funny because when I launched the company, I launched it as this company that I wanted to be sustainable. But I feel like I learned so much sustainability from the refugee women that I worked with, more so than what I could have brought, right? Because a lot of these women, again, went through war. And so they were very resourceful. They were a lot more resourceful than I was. So I learned a lot of the sustainability practices from them. And we see this within a lot of countries where they are impacted by colonization or war, or they're devastated by those kinds of laws. They make use of what little they have. So it truly was a sustainable practice through and through. And because it was artisan-led production, obviously it was slower, it was more intentional, it was a slow fashion line. And so it naturally supported this circularity, if you will. We were not overproducing, we were not making inventory, we were making what was needed. And essentially it was like this reduction of waste, right? So sustainability wasn't a trend for them. This was how life passed down through generations in a war-impacted country. So I feel like I was probably most surprised by that, the fact that I went into it saying I want to produce a slow fashion line, and I learned more from them than what I brought to the table in terms of producing sustainably. But also something that I already knew that other people did not know, and this was kind of one of these misconceptions and stereotypes that I wanted to change, is that refugee artisans not only are very resourceful, they're also very skilled. They come with a lot of work ethics that they want to share, right? And so they're very generous and gracious in their nature. And so that was something that I was really happy to share with people that supported Blue Meets Blue.
When I started this sustainability transformation podcast, my major focus was more the environment, and I was surprised to learn how
Yeah.
one of the previous guests mentioned that we talk a lot about making the environment being sustainable for 2030, 2040, 2050, but
Mhm.
we tend to forget that who is going to inherit that environment. Is going to be people, and how are we sustaining the people? One of the reasons why sustainability in companies has not been able to be achieved is because companies are focused externally on reporting, compliance, which is all about governments and investors, but they forget about the people, employees who can increase productivity, employees who can help reduce energy, cut waste. The list goes on and on about upscaling, rescaling, employees. Using that as a context, what are some of the key insights you can share around those skills and craftsmanship as pillars of sustainability on your journey?
Well, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. I think we live in a consumer-driven capitalist world right now, and the push is to buy more, buy more, buy more, and buy cheaper, and buy faster, and buy now, which is the name of a documentary that I would absolutely recommend for anybody interested in the topic. And another documentary that I would recommend is The True Cost. So, what is the true cost of producing this fast fashion? It's awful, we know, for the planet, and it's also really awful for the people that are working in these sweatshops. And We've all heard of the awful working conditions and the buildings that have collapsed. So the thing is, if your bottom line is making more and selling more and making more money, you're not going to be able to have something that's sustainable. I believe that you cannot have social resilience and environmental resilience are inseparable, right? Because at some level, these things go hand in hand. And so if your bottom line is that kind of resiliency and sustainability, that kind of spans across all sectors. You can't say that you're trying to sustain the planet and then not sustain the people, because then what's the point, right? And you can't claim sustainability if your workers are underpaid or they're invisible or they're, not like the bottom line is that empowerment. So I feel like measuring impact, if we're going to talk about it from that perspective, has to be holistic. And for a lot of us, that means that we're not just tracking how much waste, right? And we're not tracking how much, we reduce, but we're also seeing how we source our materials. And we're also seeing how we're paying our workers and how many people we're able to pay fairly and what skills we're able to pass on and how their families benefit. Like, it's a whole model that oftentimes people get really excited. And then the other thing too is opportunities come up, right? And this is where things get tricky, because you want to keep that big picture in mind. Even if something is exciting, if it goes against the company's values, then probably it's not a good idea to scale at that level, because it might be tempting, right? It might be tempting to make more money. It might be tempting, but if it's going to compromise your values, then you're no longer a mission-driven company. So I guess it has to be holistic in that approach.
Within your supply chain or the companies that you are looking or already working with, how has the journey been with finding suppliers who align with your sustainability goals?
So this last summer, I was able to travel to Syria, which I haven't been able to do for a very long time. And I partnered with factories that were over there, because the goal is, like I said, to be able to bring the fabric from there and employ the refugees over here. We don't have any middlemen. Our supply chain's very small, in the sense that we are directly partnering with the people that are making the fabric, which is amazing. You don't get to see that often. For anybody that wants to think about sustainability or starting a company that's sustainable, I would say that you need to start local and start with human beings. Again, we're constantly pushed. If we're going to think about this as a competition, or we're going to be thinking about this as a way, and especially fashion is extremely saturated. If you're going to be thinking about it in this way, then you're competing against big dogs that have, that will outcompete you in any given time. So your people will find you, I would say. But start with human beings, start small, and don't be pushed to, what do they call that term? McDonaldization, right? Like that constant producing faster, cheaper, and, automating and all of that stuff, because you're losing that human element, especially if you're a mission-driven company, especially if your goal is sustainability, then I can't see that practice being good for you, your company, or the environment. And then again, when it comes to scaling, not to lose sight of your values, because it is really tempting to compromise when the demand gets higher, right? But protecting that kind of integrity of your business is what gives your brand that longevity, and it gives you that fulfill, especially if your goal was that sustainability. It gives you, I think, a fulfillment that no other company probably would. So whether that looks like maybe producing limited collections or taking pre-orders, or even just for example, for our next collection, we have a limited quantity of fabrics. And so when that fabric's done, which makes it exclusive, which makes it exciting, but also we're reducing waste. So I would say that there's a lot of resources out there. If you want to have that dimension, you could partner with resettlement centers, because a lot of refugees come through resettlement centers, and the resettlement centers will survey those individuals to see what their skill set is, right? So this spans across all sectors. If you are a contractor and you need GCs, there are a lot of people that have that experience coming from different countries. If you are a painter, if you are a designer, there's so many, again, across all sectors. I've met so many refugees that had a skill set in painting, in housework, in like putting up wallpapers, right? Like truly a plethora. So if you want those resources, the resources are out there, and you can collaborate with resettlement centers, with ethical factories. There's a ton of ethical factories. So you don't really have to reinvent the wheel. You can just start local, and you can see what resources your community already provides you.
Yeah, that's amazing with those opportunities. And There's a lot of talk about burnout, but I believe that, yes, we all chase different goals, but it really helps when you can pursue some of these initiatives where there is a purpose behind it. And you mentioned about the fulfillment, which is so important because I believe that fulfillment, for me, is what gets me excited, to explore some of these initiatives. So that's good. So in terms of what is artisan-led production, would you say, and how is that contribute towards reducing waste, or some may call circularity, which is keeping materials in use for a long time or minimizing the impact? But for the listeners who may not have heard about artisan, when we say artisan-led, production from your organization, what would you say that is?
I would say artisan-led production is just naturally slower and it's more intentional. It supports the community, it supports circularity, like you said, and we're not overproducing. We're very intentional about what we're making, what is needed, and then for people to be able to cherish those items. So it means something to the people making it, it means something to the people that are going to purchase it. And then there's that longevity with the piece. Yeah, it's naturally going to be, going to cost more than what you're going to get from a fast fashion line, but you know that the fabric is well made. You know that you're supporting a good cause. You know that it's probably made to fit you because we take measurements and then every piece is made to fit the customer. So again, this is not a trend. This is not a sustainability is a trend and a fad type of situation. It's the way that we incorporate that into the entire company, from the shipping material to the fabric to the way that the production is.
That's good. So we will take a quick break. So if you're enjoying this conversation, please subscribe and share this episode with someone who is passionate about connecting the social good with sustainability, as we're discussing with Shahd. So yeah, welcome back. So we're exploring the cultural heritage,
Mhm.
and then I'm trying to link that with the willingness to buy, perhaps to give you a context about the willingness to buy. So there is a common, misconception that if you make things sustainable, it will be too expensive and people will not buy. But I am a strong believer that there is always going to be a section of customers who appreciate, in your instance, it might be their cultural heritage and may be willing to buy, the willingness to pay more. I'm curious to know how you may have encountered any such challenges, or how you've had to make it clear to the customer, which maybe a startup founder or leader may learn from that part of the willingness to pay.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would give you two examples on the opposite extremes. I've had one person that was going to purchase something, and then when they saw the price, they were like, I don't understand. I can buy, this a maxi skirt from, insert any fast fashion name, and for a quarter of the price. And they were not thrilled with the price. And I had to explain to them what it means to be sustainable, what it means to not get your fabric from a sweatshop. Sometimes you find yourself educating the client, and they'll come around and they'll understand, but honestly sometimes the price point isn't for everyone, and that's okay. But they, for the most part, when they are educated about the story behind it, they're a lot more willing to at least understand and be like, okay, I mean, maybe I can't afford it, but I'm really glad somebody's doing this. On the other hand, I had somebody that was absolutely phenomenal that wanted to design her wedding outfit with Blue Meets Blue, and she was willing to pay the price, in addition to the fact that she didn't want it to be this like wedding gown. She wanted it to be a two-piece like skirt and shirt because she wanted to keep wearing it. So, I mean, you want to talk about sustainability, like that was like in action. She wanted to wear it at her wedding, and she didn't want it to be something that she only wore once tucked away in her closet. She wanted it to have a story, and she wanted it to be this circular piece that she kept wearing. And so you have people, your people will find you. There are people that value this work and that they want to help sustain it. And so those are the people that are going to, see the value in it and not mind paying the amount that is required to keep a company like this going.
So you mentioned around the education of explaining customers in general, as they say, our attention span is, getting low. And so people just want to see things and within 2 seconds, they know what it is without. I'm curious to learn actually how you've perfected or used effective storytelling. You mentioned about the explaining where people can grasp quickly. Yes, the price may be up, but quickly, this is what they need to know that we can learn?
I mean, I feel like I'm a storyteller at heart, whether it's through my work in academia or I teach at the university. So when I'm teaching my students or in the books that I write, there's a storytelling that takes place there because I feel like as human beings, we are able to connect with other people's experiences through anecdotal work. And so for the most part, I even like with the way we do a pop-up shop, for example, or a trunk show, I like to combine different elements of human emotion, whether it's through the music that we choose or the video that we'll show. It evokes a certain emotion that people are able to then much more be able to receive and be understanding of all of the emotion that goes into sustaining and creating a company like this. Again, I mean, I know even like I said, within the classroom, when I'm connecting with my students, the other day I played a video for them, like a 2-minute video about the refugee journey. And that is how I started off the class because that's what we were going to talk about, and it frames the story. So even on our social media, I like to show the behind the scenes. I like to show, especially for this next coming collection, because there's so much within the factories that are in Syria. I want people to connect with who's making their clothes. I want people to connect with who's making the purses. I want people to see that they are directly impacting a factory that's over there and it's not going through a million middlemen. Like, here's the actual person. This is the cherry tree that your purse came from. Like, it's that connected. And so I think storytelling is really important, and we can't dismiss that level of connection that we get through sharing stories and sharing narratives and just being able to connect to human beings in that way.
Are there any insights from the building of the business model that you may be able to share?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you a recent example, and this is something that comes up often. I will have some kind of media opportunity or something where somebody wants to run a story about Blue Meets Blue and they're really excited about it. But then it's like, okay, we want to come in and we want to interview the artisans. And I've had, multiple occasions where I was like, all right, let's do the interviews, but I can't keep bringing in cameras and bringing in people. And it's almost like you're putting people on display, and it's antithetical to what we stand for, which is valuing people and privacy. I mean, we try to connect our audience with the artisans through the product that they purchase. So you purchase a product, it'll probably give you a little story of the person that made it. Sometimes you'll get to see the behind the scenes on the social media. We have had media coverage. But I just recently had someone reach out and they wanted to run a piece and they were like, we'd love to come in and we'd like to do an interview. And I'm like, I can't keep doing this it's just not, I just don't find it ethical, to be honest. So that's just an example. And we've had to give up a lot of media coverage opportunities because people want an exciting story and people's lives are not for entertainment. So that's just one example in terms of, I guess, how we value people's lives and people's privacy and how we value sustainability in a way that goes beyond just like the external.
The fact that you are getting those interests shows that your storytelling is good. And some of the key challenges in environmental sustainability is metrics. From a social impact, what are some of the creative ways you are able to measure those people aspects? Because it's not easy to measure about people, for example,
Of course.
our motivation, our purpose.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people will ask, like you said, in terms of scalability and in terms of numbers, that is what shows what success is, right? Like how much money I was able to make this year, and they want tangible results. But for me, because this company started as this exploration of how we heal collective trauma within community through art therapy, through art healing methods, for me, measuring success is very different. So, for example, when an artisan comes and now they have extra money to buy their child a new uniform, and they're no longer waiting for hand-me-downs from the community and they have that like glowing excitement, that for me is success, right? Or when somebody comes and they're able to now purchase a car and get to work and they've learned how to drive in a new country, that to me is success. When you are able to see people transform from their, even their storytelling as we're sitting together and because we sit together and it's a whole, community, if you will. And when their stories start off after just having resettled with, full of anticipation and fear and not sure and not certain what the future looks like. And it's transformed to something that's a lot more confident. And, they feel like there's a sense of belonging. That to us is success. And so the company is very different than other companies. And it's the way we measure success, the way we measure, how we want to produce, how we want to sustain is completely different than other companies.
How do you see your industry in the next 3 to 5 years that excites you or you are looking forward to it?
Do you mean the fashion industry as a whole or my company?
The fashion industry where your company operates in, related to your company, that you feel it might be a new technology or a new artisan-led design.
I mean, I think, like you said, we're moving really quickly and progressing in AI and machines and automation. I'd love to see us go back to human. I'd love to see us be able to, support our own local community and support human beings, and return to handmade craft. Right, that's something that really set Syria apart this summer when I went back and I visited. I was amazed by the amount of people that were able to do things with their hands because I'm just not used to it here in the US. Everybody was able to fix everything. Everybody was able to make something. The people that were making the purses, I mean, I just recently, the last post is like it's supposed to be a surprise, but I'll ruin it. It's the way they're making the handle of the purse from the wood. And it's just amazing because it's just, you don't see that here anymore. Everything here, we just outsource. We outsource to people and then we import. Like, there's not much handmade and craft and all of that. So I'd love to see that. And then in terms of Blue Meets Blue, I'd love to spread the word about it more. I would love to support the factories in Syria more. So we're doing our purse production, our clutches. We have brocade clutches and we have wooden clutches. The wooden clutches have mother of pearl inlay. So I'd love to support the factories over there that are making those and potentially get them in stores. And the way that would look would still be sustainable, right? We'd still, whether it's like a smaller pop-up shop or an event, just to spread the word about it more and be able to support the industry as it grows.
What is your final thoughts or message to the listener?
I hope that people learn to connect with the people behind their clothes more. I hope that people are able to connect, and this is not just for clothing, all sectors, right? Food, whatever. I hope we're able to have a human connection again. I hope we're able to see beyond capitalistic models and beyond faster, cheaper, more, and return to a sense of human and connect with each other and empower one another and listen to each other's stories and make space for each other's growth.
A huge thank you to Shahd for your time and the incredible insights that you've shared. Those human stories linked with that sustainable transformation has been great. So if listeners want to find more of your work, Shahd, where can they find you?
Our website, bluemeetsblue.com, and then on our social media, also Blue Meets Blue on Instagram, on Facebook, Blue Meets Blue.
Okay, great. Thank you to the listeners also. Please subscribe and keep transforming. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.